Can a war end when no side in the conflict is ready to stop fighting? That's essentially the situation we're facing in the Gulf right now, with Iran and the US and Israel, each calculating that they are kind of winning the war and they're winning it on their own terms. I'm Borzu Deragahi. I'm the founder of the newsletter and podcast Badlands. Please listen and subscribe at borzu.substack.com. That's BORZOU. Just recently, I had an interview with India's NewsX in which we discussed some of the calculations that are going into the war, both military and economic.
Thank you very much for joining us, Borzu. It's a pleasure to talk to you as well. We're just getting further reports from Dubai. There has been missiles intercepted there. This is showing Iran's persistent strikes on those Gulf states, injuring 3 individuals in the process. We were just also conversing about the fact that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait have all, according to reports, are now supporting this conflict. Can I get your insight as to why and what might be behind that?
Well, I think that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have always, in some ways, supported the U.S. and Israeli kind of ambitions for the Middle East. They've always been very much under the security umbrella of the U.S. And in the military sense. And I think there's a little bit of a split. If you look at Qatar and Oman, they have a much more nuanced position, even Kuwait to some extent. But look, you mentioned all the damage that was done, the 3 individuals injured in Dubai and the strikes that the Iranians have been making against the Gulf states. You didn't mention Israel, but they've been also attacking Israel. But you have to also look at what's happening in Iran right now. There are, just ferocious rounds of strikes, including on civilian infrastructure. There was in the city of Isfahan this massive mushroom cloud that went up overnight. And so the Iranians are very angry. The regime is very angry, and more people are becoming kind of nationalistic and rallying around the flag, so to speak. So there's tremendous pressure on the regime itself, in addition to some of the more extreme elements. Even some of the more moderate elements are coming in line. One thing that I've heard from people talking to them in Tehran is they feel very happy when they see Dubai or Tel Aviv burning. They like that because it seems like they're giving punishment to the people who are punishing them. We shouldn't forget that Israel and the United States started this war. They launched it in a kind of Game of Thrones red wedding scenario in the middle of negotiations. They killed the supreme leader, even though he was very unpopular with a huge segment of the population. There is a fanatical devotion to him as well. They also hit a school with 165 schoolgirls in it, boys as well. And this has created a situation where there is a domestic push at this point for this war to continue, in addition to the push by the Gulfies.
We're moving over to another front, Iraq, where a strike in the west of the country has killed 2 fighters from the Hashd al-Shaabi alliance, also known as the Popular Mobilization Forces, Iraqi officials have said on Tuesday. 4 others were wounded in the attack, which targeted a checkpoint in Anbar province. The PMF blamed the United States and Israel for the strike, calling it heinous. The alliance, now part of Iraq's regular armed forces, still contains several pro-Iran factions. This incident comes amid rising tensions in the region, with US-Iranian dynamics continuing to influence security inside Iraq. Authorities warn that such attacks could fuel further violence and destabilize local communities.
Well, Iraq is very much under the sway of the Islamic Republic. There are those militias that you mentioned. There are also elements in the government, in the elected government, that are very pro-Iranian. I think that what is happening is that I don't listen to what Trump says. I don't listen to what Pete Hegseth says. I look at what the troops are doing and where they're moving. And it looks like they are possibly preparing some kind of kinetic action, some kind of attempt to perhaps take over one of the islands inside the Persian Gulf, or some part of the Persian Gulf. And if they do that, one of the things that the Americans will be worried about is attacks from Iraq. And this could be an attempt to kind of put those forces, those Iraqi militias, in check in case, for example, the Americans try to make a move on Khark Island or the southwest Khuzestan province. That's very close to Iraq, and Iraq could create a lot of havoc for them. So this attack that you described could be an attempt to kind of put a little chess piece over into Iraq to prevent that move from coming into play.
Reports suggesting that millions of jobs here could disappear. Is the region that's struggling with youth unemployment already, how damaging will this even month of conflict be for the region in general?
It's not really about the region. I think the greater impact of this conflict will be felt in countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, Latin America, etc. But I want to say that this is the consequence, in a way, the ironic consequence of sanctioning Iran for 30, 40 years. Iran is not part of the global economy. It's not part of the SWIFT banking system. It doesn't have any connection to, there's no official Nike store in Tehran. There's no Shell gas stations. So in a way, they're in a position where they can afford to really, really damage the global economy and create a lot of pain for the whole entire world because as a punishment for this war. So I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to mobilize the world against it. But at this point, if you look at the polling numbers, even in the United States, people are blaming the U.S. for the war, and people are sympathizing wildly with Iran and the Iranian position. So I don't know how bad of a strategy, as Dan was saying, this could be. For now, it seems Iran is content to just damage the world economy from which it has been excluded as a way of pressuring both the U.S. and the West to change their calculations. This has been the Badlands Podcast. Please subscribe at borzu.substack.com. Thank you so much for listening.